Sweetheart, listen closely, because what I'm about to share with you tonight isn't something ordinary. This message reached you for a reason. Out of the countless people scrolling right now, something made you stop right here. That wasn't chance. And by the time this ends, you'll finally understand why someone in your life has been acting distant, unsure, quiet, yet somehow can't seem to walk away from you either. Don't scroll past this. Stay with me, because something big is about to be revealed. There's a person out there, someone very specific, who cares about you far more deeply than you probably realize. When the world goes quiet, you're the one on their mind. Your words replay in their head long after the conversation ends. They look for signs from you, even if they won't admit it to themselves. But there's one thing standing in their way. One thing they're wrestling with, and it has to do with how you look. Now, before your mind starts spinning worst-case scenarios, before fear creeps in, hear me out, because the truth here runs much deeper than you'd expect. This isn't about looking perfect. It's not about beauty standards or whatever the world tries to convince you matters. No, this is something far more emotional, something buried under the surface. And here's the twist. The very thing they struggle to accept about you is the exact thing pulling them closer, making them fall harder for you every day. Yes, you heard that right. Keep reading, because what comes next could completely change how you see yourself. This person picks up on things nobody else notices. Where others see your smile, they catch the sadness tucked behind it. Where others hear you laugh, they hear how tired you really are. Where most people glance at you and move on, this person studies you like every little detail matters, and that terrifies them because loving you feels like a risk to their heart. You have this way of making people face things they've been avoiding. You expose truths just by being yourself. And the thing they can't quite accept isn't physical at all. It's what that feature says about you. Maybe it's the weariness in your eyes. Maybe it's how you mask pain with confidence. Maybe it's that quiet insecurity you thought no one could see. But they saw it. They saw all of it, and it shook them, because they weren't prepared to meet someone like you. They were ready for easy, forgettable connections, shallow conversations, predictable people. Then you showed up, and suddenly nothing felt simple anymore. Stick with me. Something big is still coming. There are nights this person stares at your photos far longer than they mean to. Not out of judgment, but because they're trying to figure out why your face stirs up feelings they can't put into words. Part of them wants to run toward you. Another part wants to protect themselves, because what you carry, that honesty, that rawness, that vulnerability, terrifies people who've spent years hiding behind masks. Pay attention now, because this part matters. What they struggle with isn't that you're flawed, it's that you're real. Do you know how rare that actually is? In a world drowning in filters and fake smiles and performed confidence, your appearance shows something true. And truth like that forces people to look at themselves. That's why this connection feels so intense. That's why they get close, then suddenly pull back. That's why their mood shifts without warning, because every time they look at you, they feel something they can't control. And here's what's coming next, something that might genuinely surprise you. Very soon, this person is going to stop fighting it. The walls they've built are already starting to crack, slowly, quietly, but surely. Before that happens, though, something small but powerful is about to unfold between you two. A conversation, a glance, a silence that says more than words could. And once it happens, you'll finally understand everything, why they acted the way they did, because they were scared. Scared that loving you would expose their own insecurities. Scared your honesty would dig up old wounds. Scared that someone as genuine as you might see right through them. Keep going. You're getting closer to the truth. This person remembers little details about you that even you've forgotten. The way your face changes right before you try not to cry. How your eyes drift away when you're hurting. How your whole expression softens the moment someone finally gets you. These little things replay in their mind constantly, and it frustrates them, because they wanted to stay in control, and love doesn't ask permission before it takes hold. It just arrives, quietly, suddenly, and now they're stuck between resisting you and giving in. And here's the part nobody saw coming. The thing they struggle with about your appearance is tied to something from their own past. You stir up feelings they buried a long time ago, not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence brings old emotions back to life. That's why they stare sometimes, why they go quiet, why they seem overwhelmed around you. It was never rejection. It's fear tangled up with real love. And the moment they finally accept that truth, everything shifts. Their silence changes, their energy changes, their actions change, because deep down, they already know no one else can replace you. Nobody carries your energy. Nobody makes them feel as seen as you do. Nobody reaches them the way you do. And even while they're still struggling, their heart has already made its choice. Keep going. Something even bigger is coming. There's a reason you found this tonight. Not a coincidence that slipped through time, but a quiet alignment between what you've been feeling and what you've been trying not to admit. Something subtle has been building beneath the surface of your attention for a long time now. Not loudly, not dramatically. More like a tide you only notice when you realize the shoreline of your thoughts has shifted again. You've been living alongside it, adjusting, interpreting, rationalizing, sometimes even distracting yourself just enough to keep it from fully taking shape in words, but it's still there, and what makes it powerful isn't its volume, but its persistence. Because the things we try hardest not to admit don't disappear when ignored. They simply learn your patterns. They wait for the gaps in your defenses, the pauses between your thoughts, the moments when you are too tired to keep negotiating with yourself. And in those gaps, they step forward quietly, as if they've always belonged there. That's why it feels like alignment when you see something like this. Not because the message is chasing you, but because a part of you has already been moving toward it long before you consciously recognized it. You don't stumble into truths like this at random. You arrive at them the way weather arrives at a horizon that has been shifting all day without you noticing. And what you've been trying not to admit isn't always a single clear confession. Sometimes it's a feeling you've been minimizing. Sometimes it's a pattern you've been normalizing. Sometimes it's the quiet awareness that something inside your experience doesn't fully match the story you've been telling yourself to stay steady. That mismatch creates tension, and tension over time becomes attention. So when this moment feels aligned, it's really just the point where your inner world stops negotiating and starts recognizing what it has already known in fragments, not as certainty, but as familiarity returning to itself. And in that return, there is always a subtle shift. What once felt like confusion begins to feel like clarity that was simply delayed. Something in you has been carrying a question for far too long, and questions like that don't dissolve on their own. They don't obey time. They don't fade just because life gets louder or busier. Instead, they settle into the deeper layers of you, like ink dropped into water, slowly spreading until even the quiet saint moment carries a trace of them. They wait, not passively, but persistently, and in that waiting, they begin to change shape. At first, they feel sharp, almost accusatory. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What am I missing? But over time, if they are not answered, they evolve. They become less about answers and more about awareness. Less about fixing something outside of you, and more about noticing what has been forming within you all along. They echo. Not because they are lost, but because they are unfinished. And echoes have a strange intelligence. They don't repeat to annoy you, they repeat to locate you. Each return is a subtle adjustment in pitch, trying to find the exact emotional frequency where you finally recognize it as your own voice. That's why they surface in stillness. Not because stillness creates them, but because stillness removes the noise that usually drowns them out. In distraction, you can outrun them. In motion, you can blur them. But in quiet moments, they no longer have competition. They rise into clarity simply because nothing is left to suppress them. And when they finally arrive at the surface of your awareness, they don't always come with words. Sometimes they come as a feeling you can't fully name. Sometimes as a memory that refuses to complete itself. Sometimes as a sense that something important is sitting just beyond reach, asking not to be solved, but understood in a different way entirely. This is where most people misunderstand them. They think the goal is resolution. But some questions are not doors to answers. They are mirrors. They show you the shape of what you're becoming while you're still in the process of becoming it. So when these questions rise in you, they are not errors in your thinking. They are signals of depth. Proof that something within you is still alive enough to seek meaning instead of settling for distraction. And perhaps that is the real reason they don't leave. Because something in you has already decided it would rather keep echoing than go silent in a life that doesn't feel fully true. And when they rise, they rarely arrive politely. They don't knock. They don't introduce themselves. They appear in the pauses between distractions, in the silence after everyone else has stopped talking, in those small, invisible moments where your mind suddenly becomes too loud for your surroundings to contain. It's in those spaces that the truth you've been avoiding starts to take shape again, not as something new, but as something persistent, something that never actually left. You may have tried to outrun it through logic, through busyness, through convincing yourself that if you just became different enough, stronger enough, quieter about what you need, it would eventually stop following you. But some questions are not interested in being solved by speed. They are only interested in being witnessed, and so they return. Not to punish you, but to remind you that there is still something within you that has not been fully acknowledged. Something that keeps pressing gently against the inside of your awareness. Like light behind a closed door, patient enough to wait for you to turn the handle. What feels like confusion is often just unprocessed clarity waiting for the right moment to be understood. What feels like repetition is often the mind circling a truth it hasn't yet been allowed to name out loud. And what feels like emotional weight is sometimes simply meaning without a place to land. So tonight is not random. It is not accidental. It is a moment where something internal has quietly reached its threshold of silence and chosen to be heard in the only way it knows how, through recognition, through resonance, through you finally noticing that what you've been searching for has also been searching for you, not outside of you, but within the very space you were afraid to look directly at. And now that it's here, it won't demand urgency. It will only ask for attention. You've spent too long measuring your value through reflections that were never designed to hold your truth. Comparing yourself to filtered versions of enough that shift with trends, moods, and the unstable opinions of others. And slowly, without even noticing, you started negotiating your worth as if it were something you had to earn in pieces. A little validation here, a little approval there, as if love were a reward system instead of a recognition of presence. But real love doesn't arrive like a verdict after perfection is achieved. It arrives like familiarity in a crowded room, like something in you recognizing something in them without needing translation, not because you are flawless, but because you are real. And real has a frequency that cannot be faked, copied, or replaced. What you've been calling not enough may simply be misread energy, misunderstood depth, or a kind of emotional architecture that doesn't fit shallow spaces. Some connections don't fail because you are lacking. They fail because they require a level of awareness the other side hasn't developed yet. And then there are moments, rare ones, where someone doesn't just look at you, but registers you. Not the surface version, not the curated impression, something deeper, something unspoken, something that doesn't ask you to become smaller, quieter, or easier to digest. It simply responds to what is already there. That recognition can feel unsettling at first because it bypasses all the defenses you've built around being misunderstood, but it is not here to consume you or complete you. It is here to reflect something you may have forgotten. You were never meant to be assembled into worthiness by external approval. You were meant to be seen in your wholeness, even in the parts you thought had to be hidden. So if this reached you tonight, it isn't trying to convince you of anything you don't already carry within you. It's simply reminding you that what you are searching for externally has always been quietly trying to find its way back to you. That's why they keep coming back to you emotionally, even while trying to pull away physically, because your presence lingers with them, in silence, in distance, even in denial. And tonight, whether you feel it or not, something has already shifted. The connection between you is changing. Their resistance is fading, their feelings are growing stronger, and soon they'll have to choose, keep running from these emotions, or finally admit what they've been fighting all along, that they love you completely. Not despite that thing about your appearance they've struggled with, but because of it. And once that truth fully lands for them, they won't be able to look away from you again. There's something they've never said out loud, something they hide every time they look at you a little too long. And tonight, You're finally going to understand why. Keep reading. Something big is still ahead. Around everyone else, this person seems calm, composed, unaffected. But around you, their thoughts get loud. Their heart won't settle. And it all traces back to one thing about your appearance they can't stop thinking about, not because it repels them, but because it draws them in far deeper than they expected. This connection runs deeper than you realize. Every time they see you, something in them shifts. They notice the softness in your face when you're pretending to be fine, the loneliness hiding behind your confidence, the quiet feelings your expression gives away without a single word. And it unsettles them, because they know this isn't ordinary attraction. This is something closer to recognition. Stay with me, because what's coming next might leave you speechless. Sometimes this person tries convincing themselves they can move past you. They keep busy. They distract themselves. They force conversations with other people. But somehow, everything leads back to you. Why? Because your presence carries something they can't find anywhere else. Not fantasy, not perfection, just realness. And real love is rare. Do you know what actually scares people the most? Not rejection, not distance, not silence. It's finding someone who truly reaches their soul, and that's exactly what happened when they met you. Your presence touched something in them nobody else ever has, and now they can't shake it. Keep going. Something big is still waiting. This person still remembers the first time they really noticed you. Maybe it felt like nothing special to you. But for them, everything changed in that one small moment, because they saw something in you that felt strangely familiar. A sadness, a gentleness, a quiet strength. And just like that, without meaning to, their heart became attached to you. That's why they watch you differently now. Why their eyes hesitate sometimes. Why their whole energy shifts when you're near. Because your presence stirs up feelings they buried a long time ago. Listen closely, because this next part matters more than you'd think. What they struggle to accept is tied directly to how much they already care about you. If they didn't love you, none of this would affect them the way it does. But it does, every day. And they're doing everything they can to hide it. Sometimes they pull away because what you carry feels too emotional for them to handle. Not beauty in the typical sense. Emotional beauty, the kind that can't really be explained in words, the kind that lingers in someone's mind at midnight, the kind that returns in the quiet moments, the kind that changes a person for good. Stay with me. What's coming next might really surprise you. Very soon, this person is going to let their guard down and reveal feelings they've kept hidden for a long time. It might not happen directly at first, maybe through a small gesture, a message, a look, a moment of honesty they didn't plan on showing. But when it happens, you'll realize something important. They were never judging how you look. They were fighting their own feelings, trying to protect themselves from getting too attached, because deep down, they already know you're different from everyone else they've ever met. And once someone realizes that, there's no going back. They also worry, quietly, that you don't see your own worth. They notice how hard you are on yourself, the insecurities hiding behind your smile, the moments you shrink away from attention because you're afraid of being misunderstood. And every time they notice that, their feelings only grow stronger, because your imperfections make you human, and your humanity makes you impossible to forget. Keep going. The biggest part is still ahead. Late at night, when everything goes still, this person keeps returning to one question. What if I lose them? That question haunts them more than they'll ever admit, because despite the confusion, despite the fear, their heart has already chosen you, and they know it. That's why your appearance affects them so deeply. Not because anything is wrong with it, but because it carries an emotional honesty they can't ignore. You remind them that love was never about looking flawless. It's about feeling truly understood. And you make them feel understood in a way nobody else ever has. Something big is still coming, because the distance between you isn't permanent. The silence isn't permanent, the confusion isn't permanent. A turning point is on its way. And when it arrives, this person will stop pretending you don't affect them. They'll stop hiding behind emotional walls. They'll stop running from what's growing between you, because some people pass through your life for a season, but others settle into your soul for good. And whether they say it now or later, you've already become unforgettable to them. That's a truth they can't outrun anymore. You weren't meant to hear all this so soon, but the signs have gotten too obvious to ignore. There's someone paying closer attention to your silence than to your words, someone acting distant on the outside while quietly growing more attached to you every day. And tonight, the real reason behind their behavior is finally surfacing. Keep reading. Something big is still ahead. This person has tried everything to keep their feelings in check. They told themselves it was temporary, convinced themselves they were imagining the connection, tried leaning on logic instead of emotion. But every time they see you, it all falls apart again, because there's one thing about you they simply can't shake off, not because it bothers them, but because it reaches somewhere deep. And here's the truth they've been hiding. They're afraid that if they fully let themselves feel this, they'll never be able to let you go. Every time you walk into a room, they feel the shift instantly. It's not even intentional anymore. Their eyes just find you. Their emotions react before their mind can stop them. And what hurts most is knowing you probably have no clue. You think they're calm, but inside, it's chaos. Keep going, because what's next changes everything. The thing they struggle with about your appearance ties back to vulnerability. Maybe it's the softness in your eyes. Maybe it's the tiredness you carry on hard days. Maybe it's the quiet sadness behind your smile. Whatever it is, it makes them feel protective of you. And that scares them because caring deeply means risking getting hurt deeply too. That's why they sometimes go distant without warning. Not because their feelings faded, but because those feelings became too real to handle. Stay with me. Something big is still ahead. There are nights this person replays your conversations in their head, not the big dramatic moments, but the small ones, the way you looked away while thinking, the flicker of emotion on your face before you hid it again, the way your expression said things your words never did. Those moments stuck with them, and no matter how hard they try, they can't shake them, because your face tells emotional truths your voice never speaks, and they hear every one of them. That's why they're struggling. They were never ready to meet someone this genuine. This world trained them to expect temporary people, temporary attention, temporary love. Then you showed up, carrying real sincerity in your eyes, and now their heart doesn't know how to guard itself anymore. Keep going. You're almost at the biggest truth of all. This person compares everyone else to you without even meaning to. They try talking to other people. They try distracting themselves. But something always feels off, because nobody else carries your presence. Nobody else makes silence feel this meaningful. Nobody else leaves behind a memory this strong just by existing, and deep down, they know it. That truth is becoming harder and harder for them to ignore. And here's the once-in-a-lifetime revelation. The thing they struggle with about your appearance is actually what makes them trust you. Read that again. Your imperfections make you believable to them. Your natural emotion makes you comforting to them. Your honesty makes you unforgettable to them. In a world full of people pretending to be flawless, you feel human, real, safe. That's why they keep returning to you emotionally, even while pulling away physically, because being near you settles something in them. Stay with me. Something even bigger is coming. This person is about to reveal feelings they can't keep hidden anymore. The signs are already showing. Their behavior is shifting. Their attention toward you keeps growing. Their walls are slowly coming down. And once the truth finally comes out, every confusing moment between you will finally make sense. Why they stared too long, why they went quiet out of nowhere, why the energy between you felt so intense, why they kept coming back no matter how much distance they tried to create. It was always love, not the surface-level kind, but something deep and hard to explain. And now they're at the point where hiding it hurts more than admitting it ever could. Keep going. Something big is still ahead. This story isn't ending in distance or confusion. It's heading toward clarity, toward emotional honesty, toward the moment this person finally stops fighting what their heart has known all along, that you became someone truly important to them, in a way no one else ever has. And once someone reaches that kind of attachment, nothing goes back to how it was. Because some people walk into your life quietly, but they leave a permanent mark on your soul. And whether they admit it today, tomorrow, or weeks down the line, there's one truth this person can no longer escape. Loving you changed them completely.